Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. Her name is Alanna Bell. Mrs. Alanna, how are you doing, ma?
Doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. And also, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. Firstly, you are an author. You are also a therapist and an educator. Can you please, Mrs. Alana, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Alana?
Hi. Well, thanks. So I'm an author. I have one published book and two more coming. I'm a professional counselor, and I also do sound healing. So I kind of have a variety. I'm beginning to do more speaking, public speaking.
Very much beautiful. Despite the ups and downs, being a counselor to actually direct people to be in the position to make them to do what is right and also what is wrong is also a high task and also goes with a lot of experience, which is also one of the things that made you to be in the position to bring out a book for people to actually learn one or two things from when it comes to addiction and other stuff like that. So I would like to drive to your book, The Road I Never Meant to Take. Can you please, Mrs. Alana, discuss more on the book, and do you also plan to write more books in the coming future, Mrs. Alana?
Yes. So I wrote my first book, which is The Road I Never Meant to Take: Real Stories, Real Science, Real Recovery. And it is written in a novel style, even though it is a true story, sharing of my own personal experience and struggle with addiction and recovery. It is my first book. I have two others coming. The first one will be um, coming in about 2 months, and then the next one will be in about 6 months.
Very much beautiful, Mrs. Alana. It shows the beauty of what you brought out, despite the challenges you've had, or despite the ups and downs you've had. You've brought out something that could be of a impact, more of a memoir, and also where they can also learn one or two things from that can also make them better and also more productive in the life they've come today. That is why I also like to drive to the point of addiction because many people in the world we find ourselves still think addiction as a look. That means it has the certain
Right.
way it actually looks. How do you think listeners can try to better understand substance use disorder, especially among high functioning professionals who appear fine on the outside, Mrs. Alana?
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. Most of us have an image in our mind when we think of addiction, and it's usually loud, chaotic, disruptive, or, looks all disheveled like the homeless bum. But the reality is, a lot of people are suffering with addiction that look competent and successful. The reality is that 1 in 6 people struggle with substance use disorder, and that is across ethnicities, across professional success, socioeconomic status. And so addiction can look like doctors or teachers or therapists or people that have it all together. So the reality is, addiction doesn't really have a look. Instead, it has a function. And in high functioning professionals, that's more about holding it together when you have a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. It's really about survival. What we need to do is we need to recognize that addiction doesn't always look like that stereotype or who we have in mind from our personal experience. It can look like you, it can look like me. I didn't think I had a problem because I didn't look like an addict. My life hadn't fallen apart. I still showed up for work. I still did a good job. I didn't neatly fit into the criteria of the DSM manual that tells you about mental illness. But inside, I was exhausted. My nervous system was completely dysregulated, and I used alcohol to cope.
And that is the beauty. A lot of people are also facing this kind of situations. And for us to deal with these little situations at times, we usually look for the most easiest thing to make ourselves actually feel good and also probably survive what we are actually passing through. And most of the time, we have to look for ways or positive ways we can actually deal with the situation that we are into. And that is why you were also in the position to to also explore the neurological science behind addiction. So, how do you think understanding the brain really help the listeners replace judgment with compassion and also for themselves or others, Mrs. Alana?
Yeah, so I mean, that's such a huge point. I wove neuroscience throughout my book because I wanted to help readers replace self judgment and criticism with understanding. That, when you actually see what's going on in the brain, compassion ends up becoming the logical response, not just a sentimental one. Addiction alters all of the brain's systems: the survival, the reward system, the decision making system. And it also really impacts your body's biological system, fueling inflammation and dysregulation, which is going to create more craving. So, the brain, it's important we know that the brain isn't trying to choose a destruction, and this isn't about being a weak willed person or a bad person. Addiction is a neurological and biological disease. It's important that we understand the brain so that we can um, eliminate the shame, because shame keeps us stuck. It keeps our brain in the trauma response, which is actually going to make it more difficult for recovery and healing. And when we see that shame is actually part of the illness, then we can actually approach things differently. We can separate who we are and our identity from the disease. Um, I can say, I am not what I did to survive, what my brain did as a survival response. I'm separate. And that's really where we can move out of that stuckness or that secrecy, right? When we're ashamed, we stay secret, and that actually deepens the addiction, feeds the problem, like I said.
I sincerely appreciate your beautiful insight. What you said is so very much powerful. That our body, most of the time, we usually, it doesn't, we usually think about a lot of things when it comes to addiction, but it really impacts a lot of things about us, our biological aspect, our career, every single area of our life. It really affects it. And most of the time, when we continue to do this and when we continue to use this kind of substances, we realize that we become more isolated. And that is where it becomes very much sensitive. And when the isolation comes in or anything comes around, we go back to the same pattern that we found. And that is why a lot of people will have to believe and also understand that the situation isn't from the outside. Because when we see people from the outside, we usually realize that they are looking good or everything is fine. It is always on the inside. And how can they deal with the issues inside? So addiction doesn't just affect the individual, as you said earlier, it also impacts the families, it impacts the career, and also the identity as well. How do you think listeners can try to begin repairing those inner and also other fractures during recovery, Mrs. Alana?
Yeah, that's an that's an excellent question. As you mentioned, addiction attacks our identity. Before it damages our relationships and our careers, um, we lose our self confidence, our self worth, and self trust. And so that actually needs to be restored first. And that's going to happen with small, consistent actions. Um, it's going to be doing what we say we're going to do, meeting our own needs. Um, we're going to need to be predictable with follow through. And that's going to be how we end up believing in ourselves again. After we've got that in order, then we're going to rebuild the trust in the external factors with relationships and career, again, through showing up, not making a bunch of promises, not through one grand gesture. It's going to be consistent, predictable, reliable, showing up, doing what we're saying we're going to do. Um, and then in our careers, we need to recognize that burnout and addiction are very closely linked. So when we go back to work, we're going to have to do things differently. We're going to have to set up structures that honor and respect nervous system boundaries, right? So we might have to have a smaller workload, and we're going to have to do things that are aligned with our values, so there's not that conflict that creates more stress. We don't want to return to the old patterns that got us stuck here in the first place.
Honestly speaking, I honestly, sincerely appreciate you for the beautiful insight. It shows that the most little things that we often ignore are also more things that can help us develop, that can help us heal from this wound that we've actually built up. And that is the little things that we have to try our best to work on. When we'll work on the little things, then we realize that those larger things that we think is a huge issue starts to mend itself, and that's often make us to be more stronger, and also make us to be in the position whereby we realize that those things that we are actually coming back to, we realize we get more restricted to it, and also try our best to develop in one way or the other. And that is why I would also like to drive to others. There are a lot of people out there who are trying their best to be with someone or also support someone who could be struggling with addiction, who could be having a lot of issues to actually recover from the situation. So, what do you think are the most helpful way to show up without enabling or burning out such person, Mrs. Alana?
Yeah, that's a great question. The most helpful support that you can provide someone you care about is going to include both love and limits. You don't want support that's rescuing or abandoning. You want to be able to show care with boundaries. And before you're going to be able to care for someone else, you're going to have to care for yourself. You're going to have to find your own regulation. You're not going to be able to help someone else regulate their nervous system if you're completely dysregulated. So you want to take care of yourself, get support, you know, having self-care is not being selfish. It's actually ethical and practical. And because the most effective support is going to come from a calm presence with grounded boundaries. Um, Boundaries literally protect relationships. And because you end up not having the doubt, or everybody knows where they stand or what they need to operate within. So boundaries are very protective. And again, you want to be able to separate the person from the disease. Don't group it all together. It's like, this is something the person's struggling with. This isn't who they are. And it's not personal, it's their own struggle. And then another thing is to allow the natural consequences to be the teachers, right? Instead of us preaching at them or telling them what's working, what isn't working, if you're rescuing and trying to save them from natural consequences, they're not going to learn. So, one of the hardest things as you're supporting is allow them to have the natural consequences. Um, I think that that ends up being one of the best teachers too. So you can still show up with love.
All right, Mrs. Alana, I sincerely appreciate your beautiful insights in regards to the perspective, Mrs. Alana. That is
Sure.
the main reason why we have to try our best to work on ourselves before we actually be in the position to work on others. Despite the challenges we have and also the ups and downs that we see in those person that we actually want to work on, we have to make sure that we are strong enough to be in the position to care for this person, and also be in the position to make sure the person is actually giving development. We do not want to force the person to actually give the change or actually do a lot of things that is not meant to be done. We want to be in the position to show the sense of love and not being forcing or being imposing it on them, and also work on ourselves as well. And you also spoke about your spiritual aspect in your book, because your spiritual aspect also played a very big role. So spiritual renocning plays a role in your journey. How do you think listeners can try their best to explore healing of the spirit without feeling pressured by rigid belief, Mrs. Alana?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you said, the spirituality played a huge role in my part, but I want to clarify that when I talk of spirituality, I'm not speaking about religion. People a lot of times get those two mixed up. Um, I think faith and religion can be beautiful. Unfortunately, there are also people who have spiritual trauma because they had religions that were very shame based or fear based. So I want to be able to present spirituality without the rigid beliefs or the dogma. It's the spirituality that I talk about throughout my book is more in lived experience. It's about connecting with nature and, really finding a beautiful connection in silence or shared humanity, our personal presence in the world. And it involves a lot of grace. Grace gives permission for growth and for change. It invites curiosity and wonder and gratitude. Um, and all of this is connection, right? I think having faith in something bigger than ourself, bigger than our addiction, is so powerful and really important for recovery. But it's your own personal journey. No one else can tell you what's going to work for you. That's where you get to explore. You get to make meaning out of it. I talk in my book about everything is on your way, not in your way, which invites you to say, how can I grow through this? What is in this experience, as hard as it might be, that can make me a better person or that can allow me to enjoy and appreciate life more? And I think that when you find your tribe, when you find people who have a similar heart, that relational, spiritual support can also be very, very powerful. And it doesn't need to have a hierarchy or pressures or particular dogma for that to work.
Nature is very powerful, and also our spiritual life plays a very powerful role in healing physically and also spiritually as well. The spiritual role, we do know that a lot of people have the thinking, as you said, when we say spiritual is more of religion, but spiritually, more things are more connected to nature. I will want to be in the position to feel the sense of spiritual healing, because despite we trying our best to work on our physical aspects, when it comes to addiction and also a lot of things that we do use as substance, we want to also be in the position to work on our spiritual life, how we can get the sense of connection with nature, how we can feel how the blessings of the world is, so that we can be in the position to heal internally. That is also one of the greatest and important tools that we need to work on, so that when we work on those spiritual alignment parts, it will be in the position to help us bring out the physical positivity that can also help us grow and also become more stronger as well. I would also like to drive to the point of relapse and also fear, because when people are in the position of probably addiction or they want to recover from addiction, there's always this point of relapse or fear. What do you think? And to be honest, Mrs. Alana, it's really hot people. And what do you think mindset shift help listeners to begin to rebuild that sense, to help them stay grounded
Mhm.
in progress rather than looking for perfection, Mrs. Alana?
Right. No, I think that is a really great question, and it's a big thing when someone's in the recovery process. I think one of the best mind shift things that could help would be moving from the idea or belief that I must never fail to a belief that I am learning to live differently. A lot of times, the fear of relapse is in all or nothing thinking. Like you said, it's about perfection. But recovery isn't linear, it's a practice. And anytime we have to practice, that means it's going to take time and repetition. And we need to remember that if there's a return to use, that doesn't erase the recovery. If you look at the neuroscience, again, it's the return to use reveals a stress point or maybe unmet needs. It's information. It's not some sort of moral failure. Um, the road's it's going to include pauses and stumbles and setbacks, but that doesn't erase the progress. And if people could learn to measure progress with their regulation, how often or how quickly are they able to come back? You know, and being honest that, hey, wow, I'm struggling. I need some help here. Um, Abstinence or not drinking at all, that matters. That's important. But regulation or coming back is what's really going to determine your success. Who you're becoming is way more important than a single moment in time. And also, again, having that safe community is going to help give you the support that helps you sustain recovery too.
I sincerely appreciate it. Shows that reaching out and also trying our best to make sure we are not chasing ourselves being perfect as well. We can't get everything once. We can't be more better. We can only try our best to develop what we have and make sure that we are actually improving. Then if we see the development coming from there, then we can see what we can do that is around us. And which is reaching out, um showing a sense of positive community that are out there that can also help us grow as well. Because we are in a position whereby if we do not actually come out, it could be a bit difficult for us because everybody now, most people are more on a technology way of doing things. So we have to try our best to be in the position to bring ourselves out more positively so that we can actually gain the healing where it's meant to be. I would like to also go back to your book, Mrs. Alana, which is The Road I Never Meant to Take. If there is any lesson you would like to bring out, despite the discussions we've had, if there's any lesson you would like to bring out, what do you think it will be? And if someone is listening and also still currently trapped and probably hopeless or afraid to ask for help, what message would you want them to hear about the possibility of coming back to themselves, Mrs. Alana?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question because it is why I wrote the book. Um, if you're listening, if anyone is listening and they feel trapped or hopeless or afraid to ask for help, I want them to hear this. They're not broken. You're not broken. You're not beyond repair. You're not too late and you're not alone, even if it feels that way right now. I want people to recognize that feeling stuck is actually a nervous system state. It's not reality or a life sentence. Hopelessness and tunnel vision shows up when the brain is overwhelmed and in survival mode. It's not truth. It's just how your brain is reacting. I want people to know that they're still here if they're hearing this, and that matters. And sometimes just continuing, even imperfectly, shows resilience. I want them to see that in themselves. And they need to realize that they don't have to see the whole road to take the next step. Clarity is going to follow movement, it's not going to precede it. So the road will unfold as you're moving forward. You don't need certainty, you just need willingness. And I want them to believe that who they are, their core self, is still there. It's just hiding under their survival strategies. I want them to know your story isn't over. You're still on the road. And this isn't the end, even if you can't see what comes next. Sometimes hope just happens with a flicker. Sometimes hope is small, but it's there if you look for it.
Thank you so much. We do know life is tough. There's a lot of challenges that comes by the way, and most especially life happens. And that is why we get to a position whereby we get stuck. And we get to a position whereby we ask ourselves, what should I do? We feel like no one loves us. We feel like everyone are not around us. We feel like no one is always there for us. And we try to look for something else we can do to make ourselves happy. We should try our best to understand that despite we being on this earth, there are hundreds and also thousands, as you said earlier, who are also passing through this kind of situation. We should try our best to know how we can deal with the situation we have more positively. There is always hope despite the ups and downs, the situation, the anxiety that comes by the way. We should try our best to take our time to think twice when we are trying to take some very, very huge action that can damage several things in the coming future for us. And if we can do that, the world will be more beautiful, as Mrs. Alana has done. We should have tried our best to actually bring out the positivity in life and actually bring out something that could impact the world as well. And Mrs. Alana, there is also a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mrs. Alana, what do you think that thing would be, ma?
It would be relationships, it would be connection, it would be really seeing the person and loving the person despite whatever's going on. Um, and I think it would be having more of an other centeredness. I think that in modern days, we've become very self absorbed. We have technology, everything is at our fingertips. So we don't need to go to the elders the way that we might have needed to in the past. We don't need to spend as much time with our children because they have their iPad and they're, entertaining themselves. So if there was anything I could bring back, it would be the human connection, the relationship, and the spiritual connection. Because I think when we feel like we have everything we need, we're not as likely to connect with the universe, with nature, with a loving energy out there that's big and powerful.
I totally agree. And we do also need to know that we are also our greatest source as well. We have to try our best to show the love for ourselves so that we can embrace world in a more
Right.
positive way. We are always, we do know that there are a lot of assistants online now, but despite that, there are a lot of experience you can learn from people who are out there who have a lot of experience as well. And that is why we have people like you who are counselors, coaches, and others as well. But we need to try our best to bring back ourselves more positively physically to feel that sense of healing for us to become more better, stronger, and also be more reliable in the life of comfort. Also, Mrs. Alana, I honestly apologize for the ups and downs, but I want to, from the bottom of my heart, to thank you for the time and the opportunity you've given to me today to have this profound discussion because there are lots of people who are in the position who are addicted, more of the younger people, and also people who are doing a lot of great things that we could not even imagine as well. And we have to understand that we are not alone and we have to be in the position to help ourselves heal more positively. Thank you so much, Mrs. Alana.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to know there are people like you out there trying to make the world a better place. We'll partner together for that. And I do hope that people will look into my book, The Road I Never Meant to Take: Real Stories, Real Science, Real Recovery, and then keep your eyes open for the next two books that will be released soon.
All right. Have a wonderful day, Mrs. Alana. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.